Arch Manning and the Longhorns survive a wild finish in Lexington, taking down Kentucky in overtime to stay in the SEC hunt. Texas volleyball remains perfect, continuing their dominance with another big win over Oklahoma. And on the track, the F1 title race is getting tight as Max Verstappen makes his move towards a 5th straight world championship. Good evening and welcome back to College Press Box. I'm Bradston Swich, hosting with Larry Liu tonight. Before we get started, we want to remind you that College Press Box is brought to you by Cap Metro, Austin Transit System. We connect you to work, school, play, and everywhere in between. Plan your ride to this weekend's game at capmetro.org. Over the weekend, the Longhorns survived a dogfight in Lexington after a dominant win over Oklahoma last week. Arch Manning and his team kept the momentum rolling with a tough overtime victory against Kentucky, and our very own Kendell Ungar and TJ Krilowicz were at Monday's media avail with Coach Sark. Let's see what they had to say.
TSTV Sports checking in outside of DKR Stadium. I'm Kendell Ungar. This is TJ Krilowicz. Texas football is 5-2, barely beating Kentucky on Saturday in a 16-13 overtime win. Lots to say about this game. TJ, what are your initial thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, coming off of that victory in Dallas against Oklahoma the week prior, where you had a dominant victory, not letting them into the end zone, you kind of expected this game to kind of be a little bit easier on the Texas side, but eventually they had some trouble. You talked about it going into overtime. A lot of that struggle came into the offensive side and the play calling specifically. A lot of people had some questions about that in the media. What did Steve Sarkisian have to say?
I will say, today in Monday's media avail, he said, you know what? I'm the play caller. I was hired to do this because I was a good offensive coordinator, so no questions asked. Sark will continue to take these plays on. But he also said the offense does have work to do. He understands the defense and special teams are performing better, but look, it's a team. He has faith in them. We saw their capabilities against OU. Obviously, it was a rough week, but he kept harping on the fact that it's an SEC road test. Kentucky, they brought up SEC champs Georgia last year. They barely beat Kentucky last year. You saw Michael Taft in post-game press conference talk about that. So with Mississippi State up next, it's another road test before a potential 3 top 10 ranked matchups in November.
And it was quite interesting as well for him to take accountability on that last drive that kind of stalled out before overtime. You talk about DeAndre Moore running out of bounds with a minute left when the clock could have kept on running, and instead it stopped. They had to punt it out to Kentucky, and that eventually led into overtime. So it was interesting to see him take that accountability. We'll see if that leads to anything in addition to the Mississippi State game on Saturday. That kickoff will be at 3:25. This is TSTV Sports. I'm TJ Krilowicz. This is Kendell Ungar.
See y'all next week.
Great work, Kendell and TJ. It'll be interesting to see how the Longhorns respond with another road test this weekend against Mississippi State. But for now, let's take a look at the Texas versus Kentucky highlights from this past weekend. Starting this game off, it was Kentucky who opened strong, marching down the field on their first drive, but the Texas defense stood their ground, forcing a turnover on downs inside the red zone. Offense was hard to come by early, especially in the first quarter, where they seemed to struggle a bit. The Longhorns attempt a trick play here. They pitch it back and throw it downfield for an incomplete pass, but our special teams changed the game. In the second quarter, after a near safety, Kentucky is forced to kick, and it's none other than Ryan Niblett who fields this punt and turns on the Jets 45 yards down the sideline to the Kentucky's 5. A few plays later, Quintravion Wisner punches it in from 1 yard, and Texas takes the lead 7-0. And our defense continues to shine, putting constant pressure, forcing 2 field goal kicks from Kentucky and only 1 going in. And in this play here, Anthony Hill Jr. snags his first interception of the year, setting up another short field for the Longhorns. Hill leads the team with 12 tackles in an absolute monster performance this game. And near the end of the third quarter, Arch delivers this beautiful pass to wide receiver Mosley V for a 21-yard gain, setting up the Longhorns for a field goal and putting the score at 10-3. But Kentucky answers with a touchdown right away. Kentucky's quarterback is going to take this one in himself early in the fourth to tie it up. And it's Shipley's clutch again late in regulation as a 39-yarder gives Texas the lead with under a minute left. But the game's not over yet. In just the final seconds, the Wildcats knocked down a 45-yard field goal in the final seconds, tying the game up 13-13 and to force this game into overtime. In overtime, it's Kentucky who is up first, and the Longhorn defense makes a key stop, completely stalling Kentucky right at the goal line, leaving Texas the opportunity to win it all. And Mason Shipley did exactly that, sealing this game off with a 45-yard field goal, taking down the Wildcats 16-13. Texas improves to 5-2 on the year, moving to 5th in the SEC and still in the top 25. Our very own Zoe Frigillana and Parker Keston covered the game in Lexington this week. Let's take a look at their coverage.
Mason Shipley secured the Longhorns an overtime win tonight with his game-winning field goal after a stalemate game against the Kentucky Wildcats. They have a lot of work to do, looking forward to more SEC play. This is Zoe Frigillana reporting for TSTV Sports. Thankfully for the Texas Longhorns, they were able to pull off the win in the Bluegrass State. However, this wouldn't have been possible without the defense, which persevered through 86 snaps and held the Kentucky Wildcats to just 3 yards per carry. Over the course of the game, they totaled 89 tackles and 5 sacks. Anthony Hill Jr. had a standout performance, leading the team with 12 tackles. Colin Simmons made a huge impact as well, recording 3 of the team's 5 sacks. This defense continues to prove itself as one of the best in the country and remains the glue holding this team together, thanks in large part to leadership from veterans like Michael Taff. Unfortunately, on the offensive side of the ball, the Longhorns have a lot of work to do. Coming off of a high note after the win against Oklahoma, many expected them to carry that momentum into this game. Instead, Arch Manning looked uneasy in the pocket throughout, going just 12 of 27 for 132 passing yards. Manning missed a few crucial throws, but it ultimately comes down to a team effort. The offensive line struggled with protection, allowing leakages that led to Manning being sacked 3 times, shaking his confidence and preventing him from turning the game around for Texas. As we've seen in previous games, Ryan Niblett gave Longhorn fans a spark of hope with 2 massive punt returns that set Texas up in great field position. One of those returns was followed by a sloppy rushing touchdown from Quintravion Wisner, who fumbled the ball in the end zone, fortunately recovered by Texas. The second return set up Mason Shipley for a late fourth quarter field goal. The game ultimately turned into a special teams battle that pushed things into overtime. Although Kentucky made a strong effort at the goal line, Texas delivered a tremendous defensive stand, not once but twice, to keep the Wildcats out of the end zone. Mason Shipley then sealed the win for Texas with a clutch 45-yard game-winning field goal. Here's what head coach Steve Sarkisian had to say about the culture game.
We miss open throws. Clearly, I'm not calling enough stuff for our guys to feel good about what we're doing. But at the end of the day, it's like we can have high-scoring games, and I could air it out and lose. So if our style of game and our style of play is we're going to play hard-nosed football and we're going to play great on defense and great on special teams, we need to be more efficient on offense with the opportunities that we get. And that's what we need to do offensively is we got to minimize the self-inflicted wounds and become more efficient. And we weren't efficient enough tonight.
Coming off of a win in the Red River rivalry against Oklahoma, Texas was expected to use their momentum from the previous week to take down the Kentucky Wildcats with ease. However, that was not the case. Texas was on the board first with a 1-yard rushing touchdown from Quintravion Wisner, following Ryan Niblett's 45-yard punt return to the Kentucky 5-yard line. The Texas defense was consistent throughout the whole game. With 5 sacks and 1 interception, the defense kept Kentucky at 0 until early in the third quarter. The Texas offense struggled to find their footing throughout the game, with Arch Manning only going 12 for 27 on completed passes with 132 yards passing. Longhorns' offensive line yet again struggled to protect Manning throughout the game, giving up 3 sacks and 8 quarterback hits throughout the night. On the other side of the ball, Kentucky quarterback Cutter Boley had a nearly 80% pass completion percentage for the night, scoring 1 rushing touchdown to 1 interception. However, special teams were the key to this game. In overtime, the Texas defense made 4 stops in a row on the 1-yard line to stop the Wildcats from scoring a touchdown, setting up kicker Mason Shipley for a game-winning 45-yard field goal. Kicker Mason Shipley was 3 for 3 in field goals and 1 for 1 in extra points for the game, with the longest field goal being 53 yards.
This is Parker Keston reporting to you with TSTV Sports from Kroger Field in Lexington, Kentucky.
Great work in Lexington, Parker and Zoe. Watching that game at home, I couldn't help but be at the edge of my seat the entire time. This game was definitely way too close for comfort. To take a closer look into this narrow victory, let's go to Larry.
Thanks, Bradston. I'm here with Trinitee Jason to talk Texas football after last week's win against Kentucky. Welcome to the show, Trinitee. How are you?
Hello, Larry. I'm doing a lot better now. The way that game had me stressed, my anxiety was through the roof.
Hey, a win is a win. So what have we learned about the Longhorns as a whole as they navigate through these offensive struggles?
It is very apparent that the Longhorns have five-star caliber players not only on defense and offense, but special teams as well. Just look at the dynamic plays Ryan Niblett has given Texas in back-to-back weeks. From the amazing 75-yard punt return against Oklahoma to the pivotal return yardage he gave Texas this week, putting them in the position to score. They always say there are three phases to the game, and right now, the Longhorns are utilizing all three.
So what do you think Texas needs to do to ease these offensive challenges?
First off, we have to acknowledge that Kentucky's defense came to play. Their defensive schemes in many cases were perfectly executed, but as I've stated before, the Longhorns have five-star players all across the field. They have to do a better job putting them in position to showcase their unique talents and abilities. Last year's offense ran a lot of screens and misdirection. I strongly believe that would be beneficial for the Longhorns this year.
Well said. I have to agree with you on that. Last year's offense was truly dynamic. They were locked in. What does Texas need to do to navigate through this SEC gauntlet and look to close out conference plays to put themselves in position for playoffs?
It may sound too simplistic, but in fact it actually is. Rely on the great defense they have played all season, continue to get similar successes on special teams, and allow their offense to manage the game. Texas doesn't need to score 40 points a game. They just need to capitalize on the opportunities that are presented to score and not take unnecessary risks that can ultimately backfire.
Thanks for joining us, Trinitee. Let's send it back to Bradston at the desk.
Solid work, Trinitee and Larry. When College Press Box returns, we'll take a deep dive into Texas volleyball and Texas soccer this past week. Stay tuned, we'll be right back.
Welcome back to College Press Box. Before we take a deep dive into Texas volleyball and soccer, let's take a look at yesterday's orange and white scrimmage for women's basketball. What a sneak peek into the season. Giorgy Ruiz and I covered the game.
Texas basketball is officially back. The Longhorns women's tipped off their season with the annual orange and white scrimmage at Moody Center, their first game back on home court. The first half featured Texas players mixed across both squads, switching teams after each quarter to keep things competitive. Freshman standouts like Aaliyah Crump and Brea Cunningham made an early impression, while the return of Madison Booker and Rory Hyman reminded fans why they are one of the most dynamic duos in college basketball. Head coach Vic Shaver kept his team locked in, even treating the scrimmage with the same intensity as a regular season matchup. In the second half, the Longhorns faced off against the men's practice squad for a real game test. After failing behind early, the women's battled back, forcing an extra quarter and finishing strong. The final score, Orange 63, Whites 55, a solid start that showed flashes of what could be another exciting season for Texas women's basketball.
We get to see how this great Texas women's basketball team gets to reach up after making the Final Four last year. And for TSTV Sports, I'm Giorgy Ruiz.
Great coverage, Giorgy. Now let's get into Texas volleyball and soccer. Both teams faced off against Oklahoma last week. Women's soccer fought hard but ultimately lost 2-4. Volleyball, on the other hand, remains undefeated. Let's go to Bradston, who's with our next analyst, to take a closer look at these teams.
Thanks, Larry. I'm here with Hallie Diamant to talk more about this Texas team. Welcome to the show, Hallie. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Could be better. Never easy being a New York Giants fan. But I digress. I'm excited to talk about Texas soccer and volleyball.
So Texas soccer is not having an ideal season, being 3-12-1. But on the positive side, Texas seems to have a lot of potential talent. What does this Texas reliance on underclassmen say about their current developmental stage?
So before Texas even played Oklahoma, it was noted that through 15 matches this season, roughly 19 of Texas's 21 goals had been scored by underclassmen. The OU game was no different. Despite the tough 4-2 loss, the 2 goals were scored by sophomore Amalia Villarreal and redshirt freshman Molly McMillian. That was Amalia's 7th goal of the season. You can see 2 things here. The younger core of this team is stepping up, but you can see that the program is somewhat in a rebuilding phase after winning the SEC championship last year. While these younger players are promising, they also bring in consistency. The Longhorns had a strong first half, ending 1-0, and they had more shots, fewer fouls than OU. Their defensive strength started to dwindle as all 4 goals from Oklahoma were scored in the second half. The team self-destructed. Oklahoma was able to exploit space following their equalizer in the 62nd minute. Younger defenders are more prone to losing concentration. Texas was outpaced as the game stretched as well. Oklahoma turned up the intensity in the second half as they had 7 shots in the second half compared to the fewer in the first. The team needs to find a middle ground. They have major playmakers, they just need to balance it on both sides of the field and find more composure.
And shifting to Texas volleyball, how did Texas respond after dropping the third set to Oklahoma, and what does that tell us about their mindset and how they keep things under control when pressured?
Texas initially dominated the first 2 sets, winning 25-23 and 25-19, showing their on-spot offensive skillness and their defensive stability. Tori Stafford and Carrie Spears led the charge. Stafford's 17 kills and Spears' precise placement kept the Sooners off balance, while libero Emma Halter orchestrated the back row. However, Oklahoma fought back in the third set, securing a 26-24 victory. This moment could have swung the momentum entirely in their favor. Instead of letting the setback define their match, Texas regrouped with remarkable self-control. Abby Vanderwall stepped up in the fourth set with consistent attacking, while middle blockers effectively shut down Oklahoma's hitters at the net. The Longhorns limited Oklahoma at a .043 hitting percentage, and they recorded 13 kills. They dominated the fourth set 25-14, demonstrating mental toughness, adaptability, and team depth. This response highlights the leadership within the roster and the ability to make timely adjustments. The team does not only possess the talent, but also a maturity and resilience that will be critical as the season progresses and the intensity of SEC matchups increases.
This team is capable of going far, and given Texas's volleyball's current roster makeup and the early season momentum, including the win over Oklahoma, what are the key areas where they must stay sharp to maintain their trajectory, especially as the schedule intensifies and more rivals step up?
So the Longhorns' victory over Oklahoma reinforces the team's strong momentum they have and underscores the balanced mix of veteran leadership and emerging talent that defines this roster. Tori Stafford's senior presence anchors the offense, providing not only high kill totals, but also strategic guidance for younger players. Freshman Carrie Spears continues to make an immediate impact, delivering kills and maintaining that poise under pressure that I just talked about before. Abby Vanderwall contributes both offensively and in maintaining court rhythm. In the back row, Emma Halter's defense and serve-receive skills allow the offense to operate more efficiently. Despite these obvious strengths, Texas must remain vigilant in sustaining offensive efficiency and minimizing errors. And yes, even this undefeated team has those errors, particularly in critical moments where the team needs to be the most focused. It's all about consistency. While Texas swept their games at the beginning of the season, that's been winding down, giving away sometimes 1 set or 2 sets. To avoid this, they need to stop avoiding these lapses in focus. The team will need to continue integrating contributions from those veteran leaders and from the young rising stars. Texas controls their own destiny. If they can capitalize on diverse skills among their team and be strong mentally, they can absolutely get an SEC title and make a deep run in the tournament.
And that'll do it for you here. Thanks for joining again. Back to you guys. Back to you, Larry.
Thank you, Hallie and Bradston. When College Press Box returns, we'll be taking a deep dive into Formula One, and you won't want to miss it.
Welcome back to College Press Box, and what a weekend for Formula One. McLaren's Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris hit major setbacks. Red Bull's Max Verstappen is charging back into the title hunt, and Ferrari shocked everyone with a podium finish after weeks of struggle. Let's break it all down with Larry and Nolan.
Thanks, Bradston. Here with Nolan Clay. How's it going, Nolan?
It's going great, Larry. You know, it was such an electric weekend in Austin at F1 this week. Coda was rocking, and I'm so excited to talk about Formula One with you today.
McLaren drivers Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris lost points compared to Red Bull driver Max Verstappen this weekend. What went wrong for the Pitaya duo?
Yeah, you know, both McLarens came into this week with somewhat comfortable lead over Max Verstappen. But this weekend was a sprint weekend, which means there were extra points up for grabs. And that's where everything went wrong for Piastri and Norris. They had a solid sprint qualifying on Friday, placing themselves second and third on the grid for the race on Saturday. However, on turn 1, disaster struck. Kick Sauber driver Kevin Magnussen collided with Oscar Piastri on the chaotic corner, pushing the Australian right into his teammate. The end result was both cars getting knocked out of the race. Meanwhile, title rival Max Verstappen breezed his way to a P1 finish, picking up 8 crucial points on both McLaren drivers. Later that day, drivers suited up again for Grand Prix qualifying, and it was crucial for Norris and Piastri that they recovered from the disaster earlier. But it was not to be. Max Verstappen once again showed off his electric pace, qualifying P1 by almost 0.3 of a second over P2. Norris was able to crawl his way to the front row with a solid lap, but Piastri continued to struggle in his car, settling for a disastrous P6. The struggles continued during the race, where Piastri could only climb to 5th place by race end. And Norris, instead of fighting for first with Verstappen, ended up in a race-long fight with Ferrari driver Charles Leclerc for 2nd place. This weekend solidified one thing. Max Verstappen is coming for his 5th straight World Drivers' Championship, and he definitely has the McLaren team shaking in its boots as he's cut the gap from him and Piastri to just 40 points.
The title race in Formula One is getting hot, but let's take a step away from the top for just a moment. Which driver or team surprised you the most this weekend?
Yeah, the team that surprised me the most this weekend was the famous Team Ferrari. The Italian team hadn't had one of its drivers finish on the podium since late July in Belgium, and there weren't any signs that this week would be the end of that drought. And the struggles continued to open the week on Friday when drivers Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc finished P8 and P10 in sprint qualifying. However, everything changed on turn 1 of the sprint race when the two McLarens collided. The chaos on the track allowed the Ferraris to jump up to 4th and 5th place, and they didn't look back the rest of the race. The team found race pace out of nowhere, and it held onto it the rest of the weekend. Later on Saturday, Leclerc had a terrific qualifying, just missing out on the front row in P3. Then on race day, Ferrari shocked the rest of the grid by starting Leclerc on soft compound tires. The strategy was a masterstroke from the team, as Leclerc was able to battle Norris all 56 laps of the race. He eventually lost out to Norris, but a podium was a huge result for Ferrari and Leclerc. And Leclerc said in an interview that he was very surprised at the team's performance this weekend, but very happy nonetheless. It's also worth mentioning that the cool, calm, and collected Lewis Hamilton stayed out of trouble all race, finishing 4th. Ferrari is out of contention for the team and drivers' championship this season, but maybe this is the start of some much-needed momentum heading into a crucial 2026 season for the team.
Finally, heading back into the world of drivers' championship pursuit, Max Verstappen, against all odds, has vaulted himself back into contention. Do you believe he has a real shot at gunning down both McLaren drivers for the World Championship?
Well, Larry, if there's anything I've learned watching Max Verstappen race over the year, it's that you never count out the Dutchman. There's a reason he's won 4 straight World Drivers' Championships. It's because he's the best driver on the Formula One grid by far, and he can win with any car you give him. Now what's scary for both Piastri and Norris is that the Red Bull team has clearly found something over the last few races. Verstappen has now won 3 of the last 4 Grand Prix, and this one was never in doubt. Verstappen was miles faster than any other racer this weekend, and when you give Verstappen a good car, it's scary hours for everyone else on the track. Now a seemingly insurmountable gap of 102 points between him and first place is all the way down to just 40 points. For reference, the winner of a race gets 25 points, while second place gains 17. Now Formula One enters the home stretch with just 5 races to go. In theory, it should be enough time for McLaren to stabilize and see out the championship for one of his drivers, but as Verstappen has proved, he can make up 40 points in next to no time. And Max has one thing both Piastri and Norris don't: experience. He knows how to win championships, he knows how to handle the pressure, and he knows how to win in Abu Dhabi. This will be Piastri's first title challenge, and Norris has a history of faltering in the biggest of moments. I do believe that McLaren will have his car ready for the final 5 races, but will its drivers be ready to hold their ground against Max Verstappen and his massive aura? I'm not so sure. I think there's a real possibility that the championship could be decided at the final stop in Abu Dhabi, and that should make all Formula One fans very excited.
Great analysis, Nolan. Now back to you at the desk, Bradston.
Thanks, Nolan and Larry. When we return to College Press Box, we'll take a look at this past week in Longhorn sports and see what's ahead. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to College Press Box. Let's take a look at this past week in Longhorn sports. Senior Christian Moss is at it again. He's been named the SEC Co-Gopher of the Week his third time this year. He's definitely a standout player, leading Team South Africa to the team title in 2025 World Amateur Team Championships in Singapore. Currently, he's going strong at the Williams Cup in North Carolina with men's golf, their third.
The number 5 Texas Longhorns wrapped the 2025 Stanford Intercollegiate and tied for 9th at 11 over par. Junior Fair O'Keefe led the team with a top 10 individual finish, while junior Lauren Kim contributed a solid 1 under 70 in the opening round. And Stanford dominated, claiming the team title at 35 under, 21 strokes ahead of Oregon, who finished second.
The AP preseason poll ranks Texas women's basketball at number 4. That's where the team started last year, too. They're coming off some big wins last season. With such a stacked team, I'm excited to see how things go down this year.
Now let's take a look at this week in Longhorn sports. On Friday, volleyball is heading over to Ole Miss at 7 p.m. On Saturday, football is heading over to Mississippi State at 3:15 p.m. And on Sunday, volleyball will face off against LSU on the road, and soccer will face off against Ole Miss right at home. And all of these games can be watched on SEC Network.
And that concludes this week's episode of College Press Box. Thank you for tuning in, and as always, please make sure to tune in to our other sports shows this week, including College Crossfire, Wednesdays airing at 9 p.m., and the 1 & 0 Sports Show on Fridays at 11 a.m. Also, we invite you to follow our coverage on Instagram, X, TikTok, and YouTube at the handle TSTV Sports. Thank you to our analysts, everyone in Mass Control, our executive producer, Kendell Ungar, and our reporters at TSTV Sports. I'm Larry Liu, he's Bradston Swich. Thank you for watching, and have a great night.